Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. We're so glad you could attend. Come inside, come inside. There behind the glass stands a real blade of grass. Be careful as you pass. Move along, move along. Come inside, the show's about to start. Guaranteed to blow your head apart.
So in the previous videos you've seen how we've built the extension up from the ground. So you've seen the foundations dug, up to damp proof course, the walls built, the roof on, the doors and windows on. Now it's time to start doing some of the stuff on the inside, and that's going to involve putting the wires in, or the wiring in, for the lighting and for the sockets. It's going to involve putting some pipe work in for a radiator. It's going to involve putting the plasterboard on the walls, and then we'll be moving on to plastering and then putting the fittings onto where the wiring goes. So in this video what we're going to look at is the installation of the wiring and the difficulties that we had with that. From going from underneath the stairs, we had to take a little step across to get into the floorboards in the bathroom, and then how we put the wires through there, through under the floorboards, and then through into the extension, and then some of the preparation work that we had to do to cover the wires with metal, and then we've prepared the plasterboard, made the appropriate holes for where our spotlights are going, etc, etc. So that's what I want to do today, and where we'll be finishing is once we've got all the wiring in, all the plasterboard on, and we're ready to start plastering, which will be another adventure. So let's go and do it. So the installation of the cables starts in the cupboard under the stairs just above the consumer unit. The cables there disappear out through the ceiling, and when we go upstairs into the bathroom and we look in the cupboard under the boiler, we see that those cables come out in the bathroom. Now these cables in under the boiler there, you can see they're a little bit of a mess. So when we came out from under the cupboard, we made sure that our cables ran through the center of the joists in the way that they're supposed to, so they were compliant. So you can see our cables there. Now the regulations say that if you're going to go through a joist with a cable, it's got to be at least 50 millimeters down from the top of the joist, and that's to make sure that if you put a nail in to hold the boards on, you don't go through the cable. And we've come out again through the center of the joists in the ceiling space in the utility, and that's where you can see the cables there. So we're going to put spotlights in, the ceiling spotlights, and we've worked out that in here, to get the right light levels, we're going to need 6 spots in this section, and in the old utility we're going to have 2 spots. So all we're going to do now is we've already got the cables through to where they need to be at that end, where they're going to connect to the light switch and to the unit, and you know, the service unit. And all we're going to do now is thread the cables through the holes that we're making in the joists and leave loops down ready for our spots to be connected. And then the electrician's going to inspect that and then check all our work, and then he will be signing it off for us. The electrician is the one holding the camera at the moment, so he's keeping a watchful eye to make sure we do everything right. You can see from this picture here how we've put the cables in through the roof joists, or through the ceiling joists in the extension. And what we've done is we've ran the cables along the lengths of the joists, and then every point where we want the spotlight, we've dropped a loop down, a loop of cable down, and then where we've gone through the joists, we've gone through around the center. So there's a nice space below and a nice space above, so the cable is free from risk. The next thing we're going to do is put some plasterboard on. I'm going to start with the ceiling, but if you look at the back wall there, you can see that there are some metal strips coming down the wall, and they are shielding the cables that are going to our sockets, and I'll show you how we do that and what we're going to do with those in a little while. But first I want to show you the plasterboard going on the ceiling. Okay, so we're going to put some plasterboard on the ceiling, and the way we're going to do this is I'm going to put a couple of blocks onto the wall plate, and we'll be able to put one edge of the plasterboard on top of that, and by doing it that way just one person can hold the plasterboard up while we put the screws in. And I'll show you how we do that. I've got a block there that's already in place. I'll just go and put another screw in that, and I'll just show you what I mean. I'll use this little piece of OSB just to demonstrate. So we put a couple of blocks. Just put a couple of blocks up here, and then we're going to pick up the plasterboard. There'll be another block there, and it'll slot in above that, and it'll just rest on those, and we can hold this side up, and it'll just go in like that, and then we'll be able to lift it up, and then it'll be a very simple matter to screw it into place. Okay, so this is our plasterboard, and this is the first piece that's going on the ceiling. Now what we're doing is we've got in here, we're going to have a series of spotlights, ceiling mounted spotlights, and we've got 6 in total. Now we've already measured out and marked the distances that they're going to be, and that's marked on the joists inside. So the first lights are going to be 1 metre from this edge, and we'll mark those in a minute. And so this one board is going to have that first row of lights in it, because these are 120. And coming from this end, our first light is going to be 90 centimetres or 900 millimetres, and our second one is going to be 180 centimetres or 1800 millimetres. That means that we're going to have 2 lights in this very first sheet, and we're going to lay it down now, and then we're going to mark it, cut the holes, and we'll show you how we do that, and then I'll show you how we get that fitted up to the ceiling. Okay, so this edge here is going against that wall, so it's 1 metre in is where the first 2 lights are going to be, and one's going to be 90 from this end, or 90 centimetres from this end, and then the next one's going to be 180 centimetres from this end. So let's just get that quickly measured. There's a rough guide there for us. So it's 1 metre in. I'll just move this board out so I get right into it. It's difficult when you've got limited space, but there you go. That's where we are. So 1 metre in. We'll be about there. Check that is 90. So right on that centre there, that's where our first hole is going to be. And if we come along to 180, we just 1 metre in, and that is right there, so that is going to be our second one there. Okay, so the lights that we're fitting, they need a hole cutting that's 72 millimetres. This hole cutter here is a 72 millimetre hole cutter, and it's part of I think a set of about 5, and to be fair, from B&Q it was less than 10 quid for the hole cutter, so nice and cheap, and they go through really well. There's a drill to centre on, and what I'm going to do is put that drill right on the spot where we want the middle of our hole to be, and then it's as simple as that. And it's as simple as that to cut the hole. So that's the first hole cut, and we'll just do the second, and I'll just Do exactly the same. So they will be already in place when we put the board on the ceiling. Now, to be fair, this can be done when the board is already in place, and it'll make the board a little stronger perhaps. But for me, to save the dust, to save the hassle, I'm thinking we'll drill them first, make sure they're all lined up. You can mark it while it's on the floor, get everything absolutely accurate, and then when we put the board on, they're already in place. We just pull the wires straight through, or pull the cables straight through. Okay.
Ready?
Okay, so we've got the board in place. Let's see if we can get it onto the hooks. Ready? Yeah. Okay, straight in there. Get it on top of them little helpers that we made.
Got it? Yeah.
Right. Come back this way.
Which way? Right.
Right, that's the discrepancy that we're looking at there, I think. Yeah. Okay, so screws.
Going to pull the wires through first. Or does it matter? This one really matters, does it?
I don't think it really matters too much. Oops. Perfect.
Oh yeah, that was easy.
This end I had to
yeah, I'll do that one. We got this.
There we go. So we've got the first board in place and the lights are in drop down. We've got the last one to do now. So we've marked out where the light's going to go. And that's it. So we can now fit that piece at the end just there, and that'll be that whole side done. So the majority of the plasterboard is on, and I'm going to show you in a different video how we do the walls and how we did the rest of the ceiling. What I want to do now is have a look at what we're going to do with these cables that are going to the sockets, how we protect those, and then how we put the socket itself, or the back box for the socket, in. So we've got our wiring in, and this is 4mm twin and earth. So it's 4mm cross-sectional area of each of these strands, or of each of the cores, and we're doing a radial circuit, which means that it'll come from our consumer unit out and it will finish at the end socket. Now we've already measured the height that we want the top of our socket to be, and that's just here on the wall. So what we're going to do is we're going to cover the cable with a metal cover, and the reason for this is that if at any time in the future we decide to put something on the wall, we go to drill, the masonry bit will hit the metal and it won't go through, and it will let us know that there's something there. Also, we'll be able to detect it if we use the detector. So the next thing to do is for me to cut this to size, and it's very straightforward. I'm going to go right up to the top, and I'm going to come down to where the top of the socket is going to be, and I'm just going to snip that straight across. With the ferritin snips. I'll get my pliers and I'll tidy it up a little so that we've got no sharp edges. I'll just snip that little edge off there. Okay, just give that a quick tidy up so that there's no jagged bits, nothing sharp that we can damage the cable with. Okay, and that's just going to sit straight on top of our cable like that to protect it. So we just cover the cables with the metal cover, and then using masonry nails we can just tack that in place. Put a few more of those in. Okay, so it's time for us to start thinking about putting the boxes in. I've already put them in around the room, but I just want to show you how we do this. So these have got pressed out, well, they're not pressed out, but they're pressed circles where you can knock out the disc and allow the cables to go into the back of the box. This is the box that's going to hold the plug sockets on. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to take one of these out, and I'm intending to put this box right there, and I want the cables to then come in the side there into the 25mm hole that I'm going to make. So I'm just going to mark that. Just mark that there on the wall where I'm intending it to go. And these circles, they can be knocked out with a screwdriver. You put a screwdriver on and tap it. I personally just prefer to tap it with a hammer. And if you try to get the corner of the hammer on it, you can just tap it. It breaks loose like that. And then if you you just pull it back and forth, and it will snap off that little tag that holds it in. So we've now made that hole. Now, in order to protect the wire, because that edge over time, if you ever have to move anything, that over time that edge could damage the insulation on the cable. So what we're going to do is we're going to put one of these in. This is a grommet, and it's a 25mm open grommet. So that it's got a little slot in it there, and that slot just fits nicely in. And you can put that into the box, and now when I put the cables in, the cables will be protected. Now, I'm not going to mount this on the wall just now. What I'm going to do, because I'm going to put a piece of plasterboard over this, I'm going to measure these distances, and I'm going to mark the plasterboard, and I'm going to cut the plasterboard. And the reason I'm going to do that is because if I mount this on the wall and then cut the plasterboard and I'm 2mm out, it's not going to fit properly, and I'll end up with having to shave a bit more plasterboard off, and then we'll have a little bit of a gap around the box. What we'd rather do is cut the plasterboard, make sure the box fits in, and then we'll put the box on, and if it is a millimetre over or a millimetre high or low, it won't really matter, but it'll be a nice fit in the plasterboard. Okay, that's what we're going to get on with now. So we've measured where the box has to go, and it's 71.5 down and 70mm in. And then all we do, put our box onto those markings, and then I get my little square. Make sure our box is square to the edge, and on our markings and just mark around the box. And that's exactly where it wants to be on the wall. And the best way I've found to cut these out is if you start by just cutting a hole in the centre, and then you can go around with a little saw and cut to shape. So that's all I'm going to do. There you go. So I've cut a hole out in the centre, and you can see I'm now able to cut round. All I'm going to do is come to the line, oops, come to the line and cut down. Just come to the line and cut down. And if I just mark that end with the Stanley knife, trim that with the Stanley knife across those two. Should just break out nicely, just like that. And then I just do exactly the same on the other side, and we end up with a perfect cut. So I showed you how we put the grommet in, and we've now put the board on. You saw me cut out the square, or cut out the aperture for the pattress box. And so now I'm going to fit that, and all I'm going to do at the moment is pull the wires through, or pull the cables through. Pull the cables through where the grommet is. And then we'll bring the box up to where it needs to be, and then we'll just jiggle that until it goes in. Bearing in mind that when you cut your slot, when you finally come to put it in, there'll be a grommet in the way, etc. So there's a little bit of manoeuvring to do that. And there we go. So that's now in place. And what will happen next is I'll trim back the wires, I'll trim back the cables, or I'll screw this in first to the wall. I'll trim back the cables, and we'll connect the front of the double socket, but we won't be doing that until after we've plastered. So for now, with all the wiring in for the lights, with the wiring in for the sockets, both in here and through in the main room, and we've got the main lighting, with all this done, that's all we'll be doing now on wiring until after we've plastered. So I'll come back to you in the next video. We'll have a look at how we've plastered, and how we go about putting all of our lights in, and how we go about putting our sockets on. So I'll see you in that next video.